Have you ever wondered what happens when the world's greatest detective is dropped into a scenario where logic no longer applies? We aren't asking if Batman could simply punch Jason Voorhees. We're asking if he could solve the physics problem of an undead killer before his spine is snapped. Tonight, we're dropping the Arkham-verse Batman directly into the killing grounds of Camp Crystal Lake. The conditions for this experiment are perfect for a disaster. Heavy rainfall, zero visibility, and a history of violence that defies all statistical crime models. Batman isn't here to fight a ghost story. He's here to investigate a biological anomaly. Local law enforcement has long ignored the disappearances, but the data shows a pattern that suggests a single, high-mass predator operating with impossible efficiency. The stakes are simple. Batman cannot win this with martial arts. To survive this night, he has to abandon his standard combat protocols and rely entirely on forensic destruction. If he tries to brawl, he dies. If he thinks, he might just live. The investigation and the ambush. The Batwing cuts through the storm, depositing the Dark Knight into the canopy of the cursed forest. He lands silently, the cape stiffening into a glider to control his descent. Immediately, he taps the cowl to activate detective mode. In Gotham, this technology turns the city into a grid of information, highlighting heartbeats, weapons, and structural weaknesses. But here, the science fails him. The torrential rain creates a total thermal washout. Every surface, from the trees to the mud, is cooled to the same ambient temperature, rendering his infrared sensors useless. The storm's acoustic chaos masks any subtle sounds of movement. For the first time in years, Batman is flying blind. He moves to ground level, tracking the faint chemical signature of dried blood. He finds the first victim near the old archery range. The body is twisted, half buried in the mud. Batman scans the remains, and the data is alarming. The femur is snapped cleanly in two. Human bone is incredibly resilient. It takes roughly 4,000 newtons of force to cause a fracture like this. That's the equivalent of being hit by a compact car moving at 20 miles per hour. Batman calculates the leverage required for such an injury. A human attacker would need a sledgehammer and a running start to generate that kind of energy. The forensic evidence suggests the killer generated this force from a standing position. This isn't murder, it's structural demolition. Batman stands, the rain drumming against his cowl. He senses the sudden displacement of air before he hears the footstep. It's an ambush. Jason Voorhees steps out from the blind spot of a lightning strike, moving with a stealth that rivals the League of Assassins. There is no monologue, no hesitation. Jason swings a rusted machete with the speed of an industrial piston. Batman pivots, but the mud compromises his footing. He takes the hit on his left pauldron. Let's break down the physics of this impact. The Arkham suit is plated with a tri-weave titanium overlay designed to stop ballistic penetration. It works. The blade doesn't cut the skin. However, the suit cannot negate the laws of momentum. The kinetic energy of the swing, estimated at over 2,000 joules, transfers directly through the armor and into Batman's skeletal structure. The suit utilizes a non-Newtonian fluid layer beneath the titanium to disperse impact. But the sheer mass of the swing overwhelms the fluid's ability to harden instantly. It's not a cut. It's a blunt force trauma event that cracks the underlying ceramic plating and deeply bruises the bone. Adrenaline dumps into Batman's system. He counters instantly, operating on muscle memory. He drives a reinforced gauntlet into Jason's brachial plexus, a nerve cluster in the shoulder that controls the arm. In a living opponent, this strike disrupts the electrical signals, causing immediate paralysis and intense pain. He expects the deltoid to go limp. He expects a gasp. But when the blow connects, it feels like hitting wet concrete. Jason doesn't flinch. He doesn't even register the impact. Batman realizes too late that the science of pain compliance is useless against a necrotic nervous system. You cannot short-circuit a machine that has no power. Jason backhands him, a sloppy but devastating blow that sends the Dark Knight crashing through the wall of a rotting cabin. Batman's HUD flickers red. His armor integrity is at 80%, and he has a hairline fracture in his ribs. The direct approach is suicide. He grabs a smoke pellet, spiking it at his own feet. The chemical reaction creates an expanding cloud of obscuring particulate, breaking Jason's line of sight. Batman fires the grapnel gun, launching himself back into the darkness of the tree line. This is a Tier F survival rating. In our survival tier system, F represents a total inability to control the engagement. The initial encounter was a catastrophic failure. Batman attempted to treat Jason like a human combatant, relying on fear, pain, and superior technique, and nearly died for it. He vanishes into the canopy, bleeding and breathless, realizing that his opponent is not a man. Jason Voorhees is a biological paradox, a walking violation of thermodynamics, and Batman needs a new hypothesis fast. Section 2. Predator becomes prey. High above the mud, perched on a thick oak branch, Batman forces his breathing to slow. The rain is relentless, washing the mud from his armor, but the internal damage alerts are flashing red in his HUD. He activates his suit's internal medical protocols to stabilize the rib fracture, injecting a localized analgesic. He isn't fleeing anymore, he's observing. The battlefield has become a laboratory. If he can't beat the subject physically, he must dismantle it empirically. He watches Jason stalking below. The killer isn't looking up. He's scanning the horizon with a singular robotic focus. Batman needs to understand the sensory input driving this creature. He draws a sonic batarang. This gadget emits a high-frequency pulse, usually enough to shatter glass or incapacitate a thug by overloading the inner ear. He throws it to the far side of the clearing. The device detonates with a screeching wail. Jason snaps his head toward the sound instantly. This confirms auditory processing is intact, but the reaction speed is unnatural. It's not just hearing, it's a predatory lock. But Batman needs to know if the creature feels fear or hesitation. He drops silently behind the killer, spraying a line of explosive gel on the trunk of a pine tree. As Jason passes, Batman detonates the charge. The blast is significant. Wood splinters and shrapnel tear into Jason's torso. A normal man would be incapacitated by the hydrostatic shock alone. The pressure wave liquefying internal organs. Jason stumbles. Mass blown from his shoulder. Black fluid spraying the undergrowth. But then, the impossible happens. Through the cowl's magnification, Batman observes the tissue knitting itself back together. Let's pause to appreciate how terrifying this is scientifically. Cellular regeneration, mitosis, requires energy. To heal a wound that size in seconds, a human body would need to consume roughly 20,000 calories instantly to fuel the rapid cell division. That kind of metabolic burn should turn Jason into a walking furnace, radiating heat like a star. But the thermal sensors still show nothing. Jason consumes nothing. He is generating mass out of thin air. This violates the first law of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. Batman realizes he's fighting a closed system that somehow draws energy from an external, perhaps metaphysical, source. The explosion didn't stop him. It just made him angry. Jason grabs the damaged tree, a pine roughly 2 feet in diameter, and with a grunt of exertion that sounds like grinding gears, he rips it from its roots. He swings the entire trunk like a baseball bat, aiming for Batman's perch. Batman leaps, firing the grapnel gun midair. The tree crashes through the canopy where he was standing a fraction of a second ago. The Bat computer runs the numbers. The compressive force required to uproot that tree exceeds 50,000 pounds of pressure. Jason isn't just strong. He possesses leverage that biological muscles should not support. The chase is on. Batman swings through the forest, but Jason is relentless on the ground. He doesn't run, he power walks with a terrifying rhythmic inevitability. Every time Batman breaks line of sight, Jason adjusts his path. Stealth is effectively useless. The creature doesn't track footsteps, he tracks intent. Batman realizes that trying to hide is a waste of time. Trying to overpower him is a waste of energy. The only advantage Batman has is verticality and technology. He deploys a glue grenade, coating the ground in rapid hardening foam. Jason steps into it, slowing down as he tears his boots free from the chemical bond. It buys Batman 3 seconds, enough to grapple a radio tower and gain significant distance. That brings us to a Tier C survival rating. Batman is no longer losing, but he certainly isn't winning. He survived the second engagement by utilizing his gadgets to control the environment rather than the opponent. He shifted from a victim to a participant. As he catches his breath on the tower, the Bat computer chimes. The sensors on his gauntlet manage to scrape a sample of the viscous fluid leaking from Jason's wound during the explosion. Now, the real science begins. Section 3. Deconstructing the monster. Batman lands heavily on the corrugated metal roof of the camp's generator shed, the rain hammering against his cape. He ignores the chill. His attention is entirely locked on the holographic display projecting from his gauntlet. The Bat computer has finished processing the fluid sample, and the results confirm a terrifying hypothesis. The substance leaking from Jason Voorhees contains no oxygenated hemoglobin. In a living human, blood acts as a transport system, delivering oxygen to cells to create ATP, the energy currency of life. Jason's fluid is stagnant. It's a necrotic sludge that shouldn't be able to support a single muscle twitch, let alone the superhuman feats he's witnessing. This changes the entire tactical landscape. If the subject possesses no functional circulatory system, then targeting major arteries is useless. If there's no cellular respiration, then strangulation is impossible. Batman realizes he's been trying to kill a man, but he's actually fighting a biological automaton. The creature is effectively a machine made of meat, driven by a corrupted signal from the brainstem, bypassing the higher cortical functions entirely. To stop a machine, you don't try to hurt it, you cut the power, you interrupt the circuit. Batman drops from the roof, landing squarely in the mud of the main path. He doesn't hide this time. He stands tall, the white eyes of his cowl glowing in the dark, and deliberately revs the engine of the Batmobile remotely, creating a sonic lure. He is inviting the predator in. Jason emerges from the tree line, his silhouette massive against the lightning. He raises the machete, preparing to charge. But Batman is done with martial arts. He reaches to his utility belt and draws the remote electrical charge gun, the REC. Originally designed to power up generators or overload security gates, tonight it serves a different purpose. Batman aims for the center of mass and pulls the trigger. A high-voltage tether erupts from the barrel, slamming into Jason's chest. The effect is instantaneous. Jason doesn't scream, he freezes. This is the science of galvanism weaponized. The human body moves via bioelectricity. The brain sends a tiny signal to the muscle, telling it to contract. The REC gun overrides that signal. It pumps a massive, chaotic current directly into the nervous system, forcing every muscle fiber in Jason's torso to contract simultaneously. This is called tetanic contraction. For a normal man, this is incapacitating. For Jason, whose muscle density is far beyond human limits, it's crippling. His own strength becomes his cage. The force of his pectorals and abdominals contracting at 100% capacity locks his skeletal structure in place. He tries to step forward, but his quadriceps are fighting his hamstrings. He is paralyzed by his own power. Batman fires a second shot, this one with a negative polarity, hitting Jason's left shoulder. The sudden repulsion spins the killer around. Batman isn't just stunning him, he is driving him. He fires again and again, using the electrical impacts to steer the monster like cattle. Each blast forces a stumble, a twitch, a redirection. Jason is swinging wildly at the air. His movements jerky and robotic, completely stripped of his predator grace. This is a Tier A survival rating. The dynamic has completely flipped. Batman is no longer reacting to the chaos. He is dictating the terms of the engagement. He isn't physically stronger than Jason, and he can't kill what's already dead, but he has solved the physics of the encounter. By treating the killer as a malfunctioning biological circuit rather than a supernatural entity, he has seized control. He herds the twitching, sparking giant down the muddy path, guiding him step by forced step toward the only place where this ends, the docks. Section 4. The Science of Stasis. The chase ends where it began, the docks of Crystal Lake. The wooden planks creak under the weight of the storm, slippery with algae and rain. Batman backs toward the end of the pier, calculating the structural integrity of the pylons. He holsters the REC gun. The electrical charge was a shepherding tool, but it wasn't a solution. The monster's shaking off the paralysis now, the galvanic lock fading as his supernatural physiology adapts. Jason roars, a sound like a drowning animal, and charges. This is the moment Batman prepared for. He reaches for the final gadget in his belt, a device glowing with a pale blue light. It's a modified freeze cluster grenade, technology reverse-engineered from the cryo suit of Victor Fries. Batman doesn't throw it. He primes it and slams it onto the deck between them. Let's break down the only science that matters right now, cryostasis. Why is freezing the only valid counter to a regenerator? Because regeneration is a process. It requires time and motion at a cellular level. Fire destroys tissue, but as we saw, Jason replaces mass faster than it burns. Brute force simply rearranges matter that heals instantly. But cold is the absence of energy. By dropping the ambient temperature to near absolute zero, Batman isn't just cooling Jason down, he is halting molecular motion. You cannot regenerate if your atoms effectively stop vibrating. The grenade detonates with a sharp crack, like a gunshot. As the air itself freezes, a shockwave of supercooled helium isotopes blasts outward. The rain turns instantly to snow. The mist solidifies into diamond-hard frost. Jason, mid-swing, is caught in the thermal vacuum. The water inside his necrotic cells expands and crystallizes instantly, rupturing the tissue structure but locking it in a rigid stasis. The machete stops inches from Batman's cowl, held by a statue of ice and rage. The unstoppable force has been neutralized by the laws of thermodynamics. Batman doesn't hesitate. He wraps the frozen figure in heavy industrial chains found on the pier, securing the limbs to the torso. He calculates the displacement. Ice floats, but the density of Jason's muscle mass combined with the steel chains creates a negative buoyancy. With a calculated shove, Batman sends the frozen legend tipping over the edge. The splash is heavy. The figure sinks into the black water, dragged down by gravity and physics. This is a Tier S survival rating. S stands for superior. Batman didn't achieve this through superior strength or better fighting skills. He achieved it by refusing to play the monster's game. He turned a supernatural brawl into a chemistry experiment and engineered a solution. The detective's verdict. As the bubbles stop rising to the surface, the Dark Knight stands alone in the rain. The investigation is closed. The verdict is clear. Physical force against a supernatural entity is a failing strategy. Survival required the total abandonment of ego and the application of ruthless scientific exploitation. Batman didn't kill the undead. You cannot kill what does not live. He simply solved the physics problem of its existence. But as he looks at the water, the sensors in his cowl pick up the unique chemical trace of the lake. It acts as a preservative, a battery. The ice will thaw. The chains will rust. Jason Voorhees will return. Because myths are immune to science. But for tonight, the logic holds. If you want to see the Dark Knight dissect the nightmare logic of Freddy Krueger or test the Scarecrow's fear toxin against the Joker, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more breakdowns of impossible battles.